So you're prepping for the CPMAI exam. And let me tell you, there is one specific area that can literally make or break your entire AI project before a single line of code is even written. Today, we're going to do a deep dive into that critical foundation in Phase 1. We're talking about cognitive project requirements.
You know, the answer is way simpler than you might think, and it's a trap that so many projects fall into. They get all excited about the solution, the cool tech, but they completely forget to define what the AI actually needs to think. This task group, right here, is your shield against that exact kind of failure.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to cover what this is and why it's so darn important. Then, we'll break down the core framework you absolutely need to know. We'll define what done actually looks like, and then, my favorite part, we'll get you ready for those common traps you're going to see on the exam. We'll finish up with a scenario drill and some really solid memory hooks to make it all stick.
Okay, let's start with orientation. What is this task group really all about? I want you to think of it as the most critical bridge you'll ever build. The bridge that translates high-level business speak into concrete AI speak. Seriously, if you get this translation wrong, the whole project is basically built on sand.
Think of it like this. You are literally creating the blueprint for the AI's brain. Before you can build a thing, you have to define its intellectual job. What does it need to see or understand or decide? That is exactly what we defined right here in this step.
And it all boils down to a really simple but incredibly powerful two-step process. First, you state what the intellectual capability needs to be. Something like, predict which customers are likely to churn. Simple enough, right? Then, you just categorize that capability into a standard AI pattern. In our example, that would be predictive analytics.
And this is why it's all over the exam. PMI knows that getting this wrong leads to absolute disaster. You get solution-first thinking. That's when a stakeholder just shouts, "We need a large language model," before you've even defined the problem. Or you get cascading misalignment, which is when that first mistake just snowballs into using the wrong data, the wrong algorithms, and totally wrong success metrics down the line.
Okay, so now that we get the why, let's really dig into the how. For the exam, you've got to know the nuts and bolts of this framework. What goes in, what decisions you make, and what artifacts, what deliverables come out the other side.
And you can see the logic here, right? It's super clear. You start with the why, the business objectives. That input drives two absolutely key decisions. What does the AI need to do intellectually, and what type of AI problem is this? The answers to those questions become two formal, testable deliverables, the specification and the mapping document.
Oh man, the exam loves to test if you can tell these two apart. A business objective, that's the big picture business goal. Reduce customer churn by 15%. The cognitive requirement is the specific intellectual task the AI has to perform to get you there. Predict which customers will cancel. The objective is the why, the requirement is the what. But when are you actually done with this? I mean, how do you know it's good enough? And what do you have to show for it? Let's talk about the acceptance criteria. This right here is your key definition of done. It isn't about perfection, it's about being robust. Your outputs have to be clear enough and strong enough for the next phases to move forward without any confusion. Can the data team start their work based on this? Can leadership make a solid go/no-go call? If the answer is yes, you're done.
And this slide, wow, this just shows the traceability so perfectly. The two key deliverables you create here, the requirements doc and the pattern artifact, they are not just busy work. They are mission-critical inputs for a whole bunch of future phases. They guide decisions on data, feasibility, algorithms, and even how you're going to measure success way down the road.
All right, now for the fun part. Let's see how this knowledge helps you spot those sneaky traps the CPMI exam loves to set. It usually comes down to knowing the difference between a stakeholder's gut instinct and the correct PMI-aligned move.
I guarantee you will see something like this on the exam. You have a stakeholder who's well-meaning, probably pretty technical, and they jump straight to the solution. This is the textbook definition of solution-first thinking. So what do? Well, your job as the project manager is to gently but firmly steer that conversation right back on track. Acknowledge their idea, sure, but reframe it. The how, that specific algorithm, is a decision we make way later in Phase 4. Right now, in Phase I, our only job is to figure out the what.
Ooh, okay, this one's a little more subtle. An inexperienced project manager might hear this and think, okay, that's two different models we need to build. One for predicting, one for explaining. And just like that, you've potentially doubled the project scope for no reason.
But the correct PMI move is to see this for what it really is. The core cognitive task is predictive analytics. That's the AI pattern. The need to explain why a prediction was made, that's actually a governance constraint. It belongs under the trustworthy AI requirements. It's super important, and it'll definitely influence your model choice in Phase 4. But it is not a second, separate AI pattern.
Okay, theory time is over. Let's put what we've learned into practice with a few quick exam-style scenarios. I'll read the question. Go ahead and pause and think it through, and then we'll break down the answer together.
Okay, take a second. This question is pretty straightforward. It's asking you to map these two statements to the specific tasks we've been talking about.
And the answer is, Statement 1 is the cognitive requirement. That's what the AI has to do. Statement 2 is the AI pattern identification. That's what kind of problem this is. See? This directly tests if you know the two sequential tasks inside this group. Okay, think about the process flow here. They've got a business goal, and they've jumped straight into the data work for Phase 2. What did they skip? What formal step, what key artifact is missing?
The huge, critical missing piece here is the AI pattern identification document. Look, even if their gut feeling about using anomaly detection is totally right, by skipping the formal documentation, they've broken the traceability chain that is so central to the CPMAI process, and that creates massive risk down the line.
All right, let's bring it all home. To get you totally prepped for exam day, we're going to distill everything down into some simple rules and a final checklist to commit to memory.
I really want you to use these if-then statements as like a mental cheat sheet when you're taking the exam. They will help you slice through the noise in a scenario question and knock out the wrong answers when you're under pressure.
Seriously, if you only remember 5 things from this entire explainer, please make it these 5. They are without a doubt the most testable concepts from this task group. Knowing these cold is going to help you a ton.
And let's just end on this final thought. The single most important decision you make is identifying the correct AI pattern. Why? Because that one choice kicks off a cascade of decisions that follow. It dictates the data you need, the algorithms you'll even consider, and the metrics that will ultimately define whether the entire project is a success or a failure. Thanks so much for tuning in, and good luck with your exam prep.